As you're noticing probably very quickly, one of the big differences between avad and an avoda, which we're working on together, is that as opposed to a vad, a normal vad, where every day we would want to take something lamaisa, which we're working on. Here we're going to have to have a little bit more patience because it's a topic which we're learning, and I'm learning as we go along, and I'm not walking in at the end. So therefore, we're going to have a little bit of patience as we walk through the process. That said, I am going to try as soon as possible to get into at least lamaisa pieces of the puzzle. We're still at a stage, though, at the beginning where there are certain basic concepts which have to be dealt with. And as we walk into habits in general and neuroscience in specific, we have to deal with the question of bechira chofshit. Okay, the minute we're talking about actions which are done automatically and happen without our choice and without even our awareness, whether it's certain feelings or certain thoughts, certain actions. So we have to bring up the question of bechira chofshit, not just on a machshava level. Historically, the world of Torah was very hesitant when at certain stages of behavioralism and psychology pointed towards us acting almost predestined, almost that we had no control, almost that even our control was a type of illusion. And when we talk about neuroscience and we get down to the nitty-gritty of what's happening inside us and why things happen automatically and why and how habits work inside us, we can't help but have to deal with the question, what happens to bechira chofshit? Okay? Now, worry not, this is not a question which we're coming up with for the first time. And I believe that this is a question which was dealt with very subtly and very importantly by the Rambam already in the Shmona Prakim. Okay? And the Rambam in Shmona Prakim already brings up distinctions between, we'll point to two different aspects of the Rambam in the Shmona Prakim. One is he relates to the fact that one of the main distinctions between people and animal is that people can be purposeful, people can act through thought, and that what makes us human, essentially, we have something similar. He distinguishes that it's not the same nefesh. We're not humans built on top of animals, okay? But the fact that with mice, there are certain things which can happen automatically, okay, is something which can be true by people. People are capable of acting without bechira and without thought and without any purpose or intent. Okay, and human beings are capable of being animals just like every other creature. Okay, but we also have an added aspect, which at some point we'll relate to within our consciousness as a certain type of bechira, where we do have a way to interplay. So first of all, the very fact that we can track a person of being capable of acting without thought doesn't mean and doesn't imply that a person must act without thought. Doesn't mean that his thought process can't be involved. Okay, and we'll get to a point to understanding that also as we go on in the habit process of where thought comes into the habit process. Okay. In addition, the Rambam, as he continues in Shmona Prakim, he does something very important. He distinguishes in thought, okay, in machshava, between two types of machshavas. Okay, he says there's a type of machshava which is automatic. We'll call it automatic machshava, what he calls seichel dimyoni. Seichel dimyoni is what we call, let's say, uninitiated thought, thoughts which just come into our head. They're automatic thoughts, which is very different than seichel ha'iyuni, analytical thought which we consciously go about and we consciously think about. Now he says something very important. He says the seichel dimyoni is something which we can affect in the long term, like it is affected by the things we do and the things we think about and the things we're involved in and the things which we yearn and the things which are important to us. But the fact that we affect them long term doesn't mean that we have active bechira on them now. Now, in the present, they're automatic. He says because of that, on the seichel dimyoni, there's never schar v'onesh. okay? Because there's never immediate bechira. The Rambam says there are things in our life which we don't have immediate bechira on, even though we can affect them in the long term, okay? Which is very different than sechel iyuni. Sechel iyuni, which is analytical thought. There, and the Rambam is unique in this also, we can talk about mitzvos and averos and schar v'onesh, because there I can have bechira in the present. Okay, so the Rambam makes a very important distinction. He says there are things which happen in a person which are not within the realm of bechira in the narrow sense of the fact that I can't choose right now. They might be automatic or happening to me now, and therefore they're not within schar v'onesh. But at the same time, okay, that doesn't mean that I can't affect them in the bigger picture. Okay, and that opens up to our world of habits. A world of habits where we say, even though I don't necessarily have a bechira right now of how I'm going to react emotionally, how I'm going to react with thought, what urge I'm going to have, what automatic action, behavior, response I'm going to have. But that doesn't mean that over time, I can't choose now to do something which will change it. Meaning it is in my hands to change my habits, even though it's not in my hands necessarily right now, in the narrow sense, to control my habit. Now, I'm going to say that carefully because as we go on, we're going to distinguish between different types of habits, which types of habits I can control right now and which type of habits I can't. Okay? And that really brings us to the world also of Nekudas HaBechira of Rav Dessler. Okay, when Rav Dessler talks about Nekudas HaBechira, and he says, there are certain things which I'm in a struggle with right now. Right now they're in my conscience, and right now I have bechira, and sometimes I'll fail in that bechira, and sometimes the urge will be too hard or the habit too entrenched that I say, I don't want to eat that piece of cake, or I don't want to bite those nails, or I don't want to think in a certain way, or I don't want to react in a certain way, but it's too hard. So sometimes I'll fail that struggle, but that's a struggle which I'm aware of. And that's in the realm of bechira. He says, there are some things which are already in my habits. He says that I don't get schar. That's not in my bechira because it's not something which I'm doing habitually. Now, don't worry. He says that doesn't mean that we don't get schar for good habits. He says we still do get schar for any habit which we created ourselves. For anything which someone else inculcated into us and created for us, we had no bechira over that. Okay, but here again, also we see the same thing in Rav Dessler and in the Rambam, where both of them open up to the fact that we have things in our life which we don't necessarily have bechira right now because they happen automatically, but in the big picture, we do have a bechira to get involved in that. Things which are beyond my nekudas bechira, which I'm not yet involved in, I can do things now to bring that into my scope of bechira. Okay? And this, I can't, I know I've said this certainly in VAD and certainly in class a number of times, that quote from the Altar of Kelm, which is so important, right? It says, every creature, every animal can do what it wants, okay? Because every animal does what it wants habitually. Only a person cannot do what he wants, is able to overcome an urge. Now, I want to step back, okay, and round up this piece of the puzzle. In terms of bechira, neuroscience tells us what's happening as a habit, okay? What's happening, and we'll see what happens with the neurons when we have a habit and why it happens automatically. But it also has a path of how we can retrain those paths and those habits, how we can affect those habits. So our bechira now immediately happens in things which are not habits. And over the long term, we can affect habits by having a bechira now about how to affect and change those habits. Exactly like the sechel dimyoni, exactly like the uninitiated thought in the Rambam, like our dreams. I can't decide what I'm going to dream about today. I can decide what I'm involved in during the day, what I can what I'm afraid of, and what I love. I can work on those things which ultimately will affect my dreams. I don't dream about the same thing that someone in an entirely different culture, an entirely different time dreams about. Okay? I can affect my dreams. I don't dream about the same things I dreamed about when I was 18 or when I was 17 or when I was 15. Okay? Those things I've affected. Okay? But those are not things which I have immediate bechira over. Okay? So getting involved in neuroscience and getting involved in habits should not scare us about bechira. It should empower us to realize, wow, we even have bechira in the big picture over things which are automatic. Okay? And that we're going to walk into. And next week, not next week, in the next vad, in the next avoda, we'll start walking into some of the pieces of actually the beginning of what happens with habits. And Bezrat Hashem, I look forward to